The sky above the Valley of Lumen was an impossible shade of rose gold, streaked with clouds that shimmered as though brushed by the fingers of a divine painter. From the edge of the valley, a figure stood motionless, observing the strange lights that had begun to pierce the horizon. Her name was Alara, and she was among the first to notice them. "They're coming," she whispered, though the wind carried her words only to the stones at her feet. The people of Lumen, a small settlement of humans who had survived generations of isolation, had always lived quietly, harmoniously with the land. Their technology was modest, simple tools, communication devices made from salvaged components, but their ingenuity had been their lifeline. When the first ships appeared, massive and silent, their surfaces glinting like the scales of some celestial beast, fear rippled through the community. "They think we're primitive," said Joran, Alara's brother, as he stepped beside her, his hand resting on the worn hilt of a spear-like tool. "They don't know what we can do." Alara's eyes, bright and sharp, scanned the horizon. The ships hovered with a precision that seemed almost arrogant, yet it was that very arrogance that stirred something in her chest, a strange mixture of fear and defiance. The invaders' language was mechanical, their symbols alien, their gestures deliberate, and yet they underestimated one undeniable truth: humans were unpredictable. The elders had warned them for years. "They will judge you by your fire and your soil," they had said. "They will see your hands and your tools, and they will assume your mind is small. But humanity's mind," Joran had often reminded his sister, was vast as the cosmos itself. Night fell, and with it came the first wave of signals. The aliens, for lack of a better term, called themselves Velari, transmitted a holographic message into the sky. It was meant to intimidate, to communicate superiority. Light beams danced across the valley, forming shapes of towering beings impossibly precise, moving with grace and menace. Alara's fingers clenched around a small device of her own making, a transmitter that could manipulate signals, a relic of human ingenuity born from necessity. It was fragile, yet in its simplicity lay potential. "They think they control the field," she murmured. "They don't realize the field responds to thought." Joran laughed softly, tension shaking his shoulders. "Let's hope the field responds to ours too." The first night passed with no direct attack, only observation. Humans, the Velari assumed, were disorganized, weak, unworthy of strategic consideration. Yet beneath the quiet hum of the valley, plans were already taking shape. Alara and Joran worked alongside a small team of engineers and dreamers, people who knew how to transform scraps of metal, wires, and stone into tools that could outwit any algorithm. Among them was Mira, a young woman whose smile seemed to hold the sunrise itself. Mira's fingers danced over holographic schematics projected from a makeshift console. "If we reroute the energy through the sub-level nodes," she explained, "we can make them see illusions. Not just images. They'll see movements, forces, whole battle formations where there are none." Alara's heart thrummed. "Do you think it will be enough?" Mira met her gaze, eyes steady. "Enough? Maybe not. But enough to remind them that humans don't fight like machines. We fight like life itself." The valley fell silent again, save for the whispers of wind across the stones and the quiet hum of human resolve. The Velari were patient, confident. They believed they were gods of war, calculating every angle, predicting every human move. But they had not yet encountered heart. Alara's mind raced as she prepared the first modifications to their humble technology. She imagined the confusion on the Velari faces when reality bent, not by strength but by ingenuity, when the unassuming humans of Lumen became a storm of impossibility. Above, the stars twinkled, indifferent to the coming battle. Yet down in the valley, a quiet determination sparked, invisible but undeniable. Humans had survived countless trials before, and tonight, as the first shadows of alien ships stretched across the fields, humanity would remind the universe that primitive was a word they wore as armor, stronger than any metal, sharper than any weapon. And Alara, staring into the rose-gold night, knew that tomorrow, the first dance of minds would begin. The morning sun poured gold across the Valley of Lumen, and the alien ships still hovered like giants, silent and poised. But the humans were awake and already moving with purpose. Alara, Joran, and Mira stood atop a low ridge, overlooking the fields that stretched between the settlement and the hovering monoliths of steel and light. "They're watching," Joran said, his eyes narrowing. "Every movement, every spark. They think they can predict us. Ilara's fingers brushed the controls of her transmitter, a patchwork of human innovation. "Let them think," she said softly. "Prediction is their weakness." From below, the valley stirred. Farmers and builders, children and elders, all moved with precise coordination, hiding tools beneath layers of earth and stone, connecting wires and nodes to a network that would soon hum with human ingenuity. The Velari, confident in their superior intelligence, had assumed that humans were chaotic, unprepared, but they were about to learn a lesson older than the stars. Humans thrived in chaos when guided by purpose. Mira's voice broke through the hum of preparation. "It's ready." All nodes linked. "We can project anything we want." Ilara exhaled slowly. "Anything?" "Anything," Mira confirmed, her fingers dancing across the makeshift console. "If we want, we can make them see armies where there are none, traps where there is nothing, movements that don't exist." Joran's grin was brief, sharp. "They'll never see it coming." The first move came at noon. A low hum rolled across the valley, subtle but pervasive. The Velari ships pulsed with light, probing, scanning. Their algorithms, meant to read patterns and predict human responses, flickered in confusion. Human minds did not behave in straight lines. Human hearts, bound by courage, fear, and imagination, were impossible to model completely. Ilara watched as the first illusions bloomed across the fields. Shadows of massive formations appeared, soldiers with spears of light, siege engines that moved with uncanny precision. The Velari hesitated, their calculations destabilized by impossible geometry, movements that defied physics and forces that could not exist, except in the minds of humans who had built them. "They're faltering," Mira said, a quiet excitement in her voice. "They don't know what's real." The Velari commander, a being of shifting energy and hard angles, scowled, or the closest approximation to a scowl that its form could express. It sent a pulse, sharp and violent, intended to disrupt the illusions. But Ilara had anticipated it. Her devices absorbed the pulse, redirected it, and amplified it, turning their own energy against them. "Now," she whispered, and the valley erupted in motion. The humans did not charge blindly. They moved with careful steps, blending real and projected forces. Farmers wielded tools with uncanny precision. Children carried messages across hidden paths. Engineers directed invisible currents of energy that bent the Velari sensors into confusion. The aliens struck at shadows and found nothing but open air. Joran's voice rose above the hum. "They can't see us. They can't even guess." Even from the ridge, the spectacle was dizzying. Ships changed course repeatedly, their sleek lines twisting and turning in ways that were supposed to be impossible, guided by the humans' carefully orchestrated illusions. And behind the human deception, real humans struck at weak points, small but effective, jamming communication arrays, rerouting energy, sabotaging sensors. Ilara's heart raced. Every pulse of the network, every spark, every flicker of light was a step closer to victory or survival. The Velari underestimated them, and in doing so, they had walked straight into the storm of human unpredictability. Mira leaned close. "They're learning, slowly, but too late. They don't understand human will." Joran's voice softened, almost reverent. "It's more than will. It's life. Life refuses to be predicted." Hours passed like moments. The valley became a chessboard, shifting and changing, a spectacle of human ingenuity. Even as fear threatened to creep into hearts, it was countered by determination, courage, and the unwavering belief that no force, no matter how advanced, could outmatch the unpredictable spark of humanity. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the valley, the Velari retreated slightly, unsure, unprepared, disoriented. They had faced battles before, but never against a species that fought not just with strength, but with imagination, heart, and the unyielding rhythm of life itself. Ilara stood, sweat and dust streaking her face, and allowed herself a brief smile. "They thought we were primitive," she said softly, "but we're more dangerous than they ever imagined." Mira rested a hand on her shoulder. "And this is only the beginning." Joran looked to the horizon where the Velari hovered, calculating, adjusting, planning their next move. "Let them plan," he said, "because we'll always be one step ahead. Always." And as night fell over the Valley of Lumen, a quiet truth settled among them. Humanity's power did not come from the tools they held. It came from the hearts that guided those tools, The minds that shaped possibility from nothing, and the courage to face an impossible enemy and make them see that life, in all its chaos and wonder, could not be predicted, controlled, or broken. The first dance was over, but the war had just begun. The Valley of Lumen lay under a moonless sky, and yet the light from the Velari ships painted strange, trembling patterns across the ground. The humans had celebrated their first small victories, but Ilara, Mira, and Joran felt the weight of the night pressing down on their shoulders. Victory had been fleeting, fragile, proof that even the most brilliant deception could be unpicked. "They'll come back," Joran said, his voice low, a shadow of worry beneath the bravado. "And next time, they'll adapt." Ilara didn't respond immediately. Her eyes traced the horizon where the ships had withdrawn, floating like titans, calculating and patient. "They will," she admitted finally, "but we adapt faster." Mira shifted, her fingers fidgeting with a small wire, twisting it almost nervously. "It's different now. They've seen our tricks, they'll anticipate some of them. We'll have to evolve, not just react." Joran's jaw tightened. "Evolution takes time, and we might not have it." Ilara turned to him, her voice firm but tender. "We always find a way. Humanity always has." She recalled the stories her grandmother had told, the fire that survived the storms, the ingenuity that built bridges across rivers, the courage that withstood countless invasions. They were a people who refused to be extinguished. But even as she spoke, a flicker of doubt settled in her chest. The Velari had numbers, precision, and technology that bent physics to their will. The humans had courage, ingenuity, and heart. But could that be enough against beings who seemed almost unstoppable? Night deepened and the valley became a labyrinth of shadows. The humans moved quietly, checking nodes, reinforcing systems, rehearsing the illusions they would unleash when the next confrontation came. The first battle had been a test, but the next would be a true reckoning. From the ridge, Ilara watched, Mira working over the console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Do you ever wonder," Ilara asked softly, "if we're too small, too insignificant?" Mira didn't look up immediately. When she did, her gaze was steady, but there was a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "Every day. But we are small only if we surrender to it. We're not small as long as we fight, as long as we make them see that life can't be predicted." Joran broke the silence with a harsh laugh. "We'll see how long that lasts. They'll learn our patterns. Then what?" Ilara's gaze hardened. "Then we change the patterns, we make new ones, we keep moving. That's what it means to be human. We are never static, never predictable, never defeated unless we choose to be." The night passed slowly, filled with quiet work and whispered fears. Shadows lengthened, and in those shadows the humans confronted the part of themselves they rarely acknowledged: vulnerability. They feared failure, loss, the lives of their families, the future of their valley. Yet those same fears steeled them, sharpened their minds, and reminded them why they fought. Not for pride, not for conquest, but for survival, for hope, for the life that pulsed stubbornly in every heartbeat. Then a sudden ripple through the network drew their attention. A signal unlike the ones before, a pulse of intelligence, sharp, deliberate, and adaptive. The Velari were responding, learning from the humans' illusions. The delicate threads of their victory now trembled under the weight of a cunning and relentless enemy. "They're adapting faster than we thought," Mira murmured, eyes scanning the shifting projections. "They're not just recalculating, they're anticipating." Ilara's jaw tightened. "Which means we have to outthink them at a level they cannot predict. We have to fight not just with tools, but with our understanding of life, chaos, and intuition." Joran let out a long breath, the tension evident in the set of his shoulders. Life and chaos. Intuition. That's all we have. And maybe that's enough. A quiet moment passed, heavy with unspoken fears and determination. The valley itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move. The humans knew they were not invincible, yet they had something the Velari did not: heart, imagination, and a will that refused to bow. Ilara finally whispered, more to herself than anyone else. They called us primitive, but they haven't seen what humans can do when we are pushed to the edge. And in the silence of the night, amidst the flickering lights of the valley, and the distant hum of alien ships, a single truth resonated in the hearts of those who stood vigilant. The greatest power was not in the tools they wielded, but in the courage, creativity, and resilience of the human spirit. Tomorrow the Velari would test them again, but tonight the humans of Lumen held their fragile victory, and in that, they found strength. The quiet, unyielding knowledge that no matter how formidable the enemy, life, will, and heart were forces that could never be calculated or contained. Ilara closed her eyes, feeling the pulse of the valley beneath her feet. Shadows were long, danger was near, and yet the spark of humanity burned brighter than ever. They had survived the first encounter, and they would survive the next. The dawn arrived pale and trembling over the valley of Lumen, as if the sky itself sensed the storm about to descend. The Velari had not waited idly. Their ships now hovered closer, a web of cold steel and calculated menace, their surfaces glinting with energy that pulsed like a heartbeat, but one devoid of warmth. Ilara stood atop the ridge, her gaze tracing the lines of the valley below. She could feel the tension radiating from every human who moved beneath her, every hand that checked a node, every eye that scanned the horizon. Joran leaned beside her, his hand resting on the hilt of his spear, knuckles white. "They've learned from yesterday," he muttered, voice tight. "They won't fall for the same illusions twice." Mira's fingers flew over the console, sending pulses into the network of nodes beneath the valley. "Then we adapt. We change faster than they can. Every trick they predict, we'll replace with something new, something they cannot calculate." The humans were ready, or as ready as anyone could be against an enemy that measured the universe in data and probability, rather than heartbeats and courage. Their first encounter had been a victory of deception, but this was war in its rawest form. The Velari's first move was subtle, almost imperceptible. Energy waves rippled through the valley, probes designed to detect anomalies, to find patterns, to erase the chaos humans thrived on. Yet the humans did not flinch. Their systems hummed, absorbed, redirected, transformed. The valley became a theater of shadows and light, reality and illusion interwoven so tightly that the aliens could not distinguish the one from the other. "They're testing our defenses," Ilara whispered, "feeling our boundaries, looking for weakness." And the Velari found one, not in technology but in the heart. Fear surged through the humans as ships swooped lower, beams cutting across the valley like silver knives. The first human casualty occurred quietly. A scout misjudged a path, caught in a pulse of energy. The sight sent a shiver through everyone who watched. Joran's voice cracked, though he forced it steady. "Stay focused. Don't let fear guide you." Ilara clenched her jaw. Fear is inevitable. Courage is choice. With a subtle nod, she triggered the first layer of their counterattack. Illusions blossomed like fire across the valley. Phantom soldiers, phantom barricades, phantom war machines. Some were subtle, barely visible. Others were massive, impossible, reshaping the terrain itself. The Velari lashed out, striking at projections, smashing light into empty air, misdirected fury wasting their energy. But this time, the humans added something new. Decoys infused with real-world effects. Small machines, rigged with kinetic pulses and signal bursts, moved as if alive, striking at the Velari's sensors. Every illusion carried the possibility of consequence. Humans had blurred the line between reality and trickery, making the invaders question every calculation. Joran moved through the valley, guiding humans, improvising with a calm born of necessity. Mira's hands flew over the console, weaving new patterns, each more unpredictable than the last. Ilara's heart raced as she controlled the flow of energy, bending it to mislead, to confuse, to protect. The Velari faltered. Calculations, once precise and absolute, now conflicted with impossible variables. Humans fought like life itself, reacting, adapting, improvising. No algorithm could fully anticipate intuition, courage, or the unpredictable brilliance of a mind capable of seeing beyond data. Hours passed in chaos. The valley became a storm of illusions and reality intertwined. The humans moved with purpose, exploiting every hesitation of their enemy. And though the cost was high, the result was undeniable. The Velari had to retreat again, damaged and uncertain, struggling to regain control. As the dust settled, silence returned, but it was a fragile quiet. The humans counted their losses, tended to the wounded, and rebuilt what they could, all while keeping a wary eye on the horizon. Ilara collapsed beside a node, exhaustion heavy in her bones. Mira leaned against her, brushing dirt from her forehead. "They're strong," Mira said softly. "Stronger than we imagined." "Yes," Ilara admitted, her voice low. "But we're stronger too. Not just in skill or tools, but in heart, in mind, in will." Joran stood looking at the horizon where the Velari ships hovered, distant but relentless. "They'll come back, and they'll bring everything they've got. But so will we." A quiet determination filled the valley, mingled with grief, fear, and hope. The humans had survived the counterattack, but they knew the war had only just begun. Every loss reminded them of their vulnerability. Every victory reminded them of their impossible resilience. Ilara's gaze lifted to the night sky, where stars glimmered like witnesses to the struggle below. "They called us primitive," she whispered, almost reverently. "They have no idea what humans are capable of when we fight not just for survival, but for life itself." And in the Valley of Lumen, under the strange glow of alien light and human courage, a single truth crystallized: humanity was unpredictable, unyielding and unstoppable, not because of weapons or technology, but because life, heart, and ingenuity flowed through every fiber of its being. The Velari had tested them, and humans had answered louder and clearer than any words: "We are not what you expect. We are everything you cannot predict." The Valley of Lumen had become a battlefield of light and shadow, a place where reality twisted under the weight of human ingenuity. The Velari ships lingered above like cold, unyielding sentinels, their energy pulsing with intention. But this time, the humans were not waiting. They were striking. Ilara stood on the ridge, her eyes scanning the intricate web of nodes and devices that stretched across the valley. Every piece of equipment hummed, connected in a network designed not only to deceive but to dominate the battlefield. "Today," she whispered to herself, "we take the fight to them." Joran moved beside her, spear at the ready. His usual humor was absent, replaced by a focused intensity. "They think they're learning faster than we are. Let's prove them wrong." Mira adjusted a control, her fingers moving with almost frenzied precision. "We've created the perfect trap. They'll see what they expect, then we'll rewrite it all." Her smile was faint, but sharp with determination. As the sun rose, casting silver light across the valley, the humans activated the first layer of their offensive. Illusions erupted like fire across the plains. Phantom formations, phantom war engines, movements that defied logic. But unlike before, these illusions were coupled with real-world consequences. Kinetic pulses that struck at sensors, traps that manipulated energy fields, and drones that mimicked human combatants. The Velari reacted, predictably at first, their calculations attempting to reconcile the chaos. But the humans had anticipated this. Every move the Velari made triggered a countermeasure, a cascade of reactions designed to mislead and disable. Ilara's pulse quickened as she monitored the energy flows. "They can't see it coming," she said, voice tight with exhilaration. "Every step, every pulse, every illusion is rewriting their reality." Joran darted across the field, coordinating teams of humans and machines. Every action, no matter how small, became part of a larger symphony of strategy. Farmers, engineers, even children played their roles with precise timing, their movements amplified by the technology they had crafted. And then, the Velari commander responded. A surge of energy, sharp and overwhelming, swept through the valley. It was meant to annihilate, to sever human networks and crush resistance. The pulse struck with terrifying force, but the humans were ready. Their devices absorbed, deflected, and redirected the energy, turning it back upon the invaders in a dazzling display of strategy and adaptability. Mira's voice rang out, triumphant. "They're stumbling! They don't understand the battlefield anymore." Even the Veilari's precision could not contend with human unpredictability. Every algorithm they deployed collided with reality, twisted by imagination, courage, and intuition. Humans moved not as individuals but as a collective mind, a force of life itself, impossible to predict, impossible to control. Alara felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of relief, pride, and awe. This is what we are," she murmured. "Not just survivors, but creators of impossibility." Hours passed in a blur of strategy and action. The Veilari ships, powerful and precise, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. The humans had turned the valley into a living labyrinth, a puzzle that could not be solved, a battlefield that was as much mental as it was physical. Joran's laughter broke through the tension, sharp and unrestrained. "They think they're gods of war," he shouted. "And we just showed them their children chasing shadows." Mira allowed herself a brief smile, her fingers never leaving the controls. "This is only the beginning, but it's the beginning of understanding who we are." Alara gazed at the horizon, where the Veilari ships hovered, damaged, disoriented, and unsure. They had come expecting easy victory, superiority, certainty. Instead, they faced a species that thrived on chaos, imagination, and the unbreakable spirit of life itself. "Primitive," she whispered, letting the word hang in the air. "They called us primitive, and yet, today we are more than they can ever calculate, more than they can ever predict." The humans of Lumen had turned the tide, not through brute strength or technological parity, but through ingenuity, unity, and the courage to defy the expectations of a superior foe. They had shown that heart, creativity, and will were forces as powerful as any weapon. As the sun dipped low, casting long golden shadows over the valley, a quiet celebration rippled through the settlement. No one cheered loudly. There was still work to do, still danger to face, but in every glance, every breath, there was understanding. Humanity had faced the impossible and rewritten the rules of the battlefield. Alara exhaled, her chest swelling with pride. "We are not what they expected," she said softly, turning to Mira and Joran. "We are not primitive. We are everything they cannot predict." And for the first time, the humans of Lumen understood the truth of their own power. It was not in the tools they built, the machines they commanded, or even the illusions they wove. It was in the spark of life, heart, and ingenuity that no alien intelligence could ever fully comprehend. The Veilari had come to conquer. They would leave having learned a different lesson. Humans were not to be measured, calculated, or underestimated. They were to be respected, feared, and above all, never assumed simple. And as night fell over the valley, Alara felt it deep in her bones. The war was far from over. But humanity had proven itself capable of defying destiny, and that defiance would echo across the stars. The valley of Lumen trembled under the weight of anticipation. Smoke curled from the remnants of illusions turned real. Energy pulses hummed in every device, and the humans moved with a nervous intensity. Knowing the Veilari were not defeated, they were merely regrouping. Alara stood atop the ridge once more, the wind whipping her hair, carrying the scent of burned circuitry and scorched earth. Her eyes traced the horizon where the alien ships hovered, sleek and menacing. This time she felt something she hadn't before, a shadow of doubt, a gnawing fear she couldn't ignore. "They'll come for us directly," Joran said, voice low, almost a whisper. "They've learned. They won't just probe. They'll strike at the heart." Mira's hands trembled slightly over the console. "We can't just fight them out there," she said. "We have to protect the valley, protect the people." "If they break through," her words faltered, but her eyes were determined. Alara placed a hand on Mira's shoulder. "We've survived before and will survive now. Fear is natural, but courage is what makes the difference." The first strike came without warning. The Veilari descended with devastating precision, their energy slicing through the valley like silver lightning. Human defenses activated immediately. Nodes pulsed, kinetic traps triggered, illusions flared. But the force of the attack was unlike anything they had faced. Real structures collapsed, devices short-circuited, and the humans were pushed to the edge of exhaustion. Amid the chaos, Ilara felt a cold pang of fear as she spotted a group of civilians trapped under fallen debris. Her chest tightened. This was no longer just a battle of strategy. It was a battle of survival, of heart, of protecting those who could not fight. "Joren," she shouted, determination slicing through panic. "The civilians! We have to save them!" Joren nodded, eyes steely. "Let's move." They raced through the valley, guiding people through the labyrinth of illusions and hazards. Every step was dangerous. Every shadow could conceal a Velari strike. But the humans moved with something the invaders could never calculate: instinct, empathy, and courage. Meanwhile, Mira worked tirelessly at the console, weaving new illusions and recalibrating the devices in real time. Her eyes flicked between energy flows, human positions, and enemy movements, orchestrating chaos into a symphony of survival. Ilara and Joren reached the trapped civilians, lifting debris, calming frightened children, and guiding families through the dangerous terrain. Every heartbeat was a test of courage, every breath a battle against fear. And then something extraordinary happened. A group of young engineers, previously hidden, activated a network of improvised drones and kinetic nodes. The Velari, focusing on the main human forces, did not notice the flanking strike. The drones moved like living shadows, striking at weak points, creating openings and saving dozens of lives. Ilara watched in awe. "They've learned," she whispered. "They're not just following orders, they're thinking, adapting, creating." Joren grinned, dirt streaked across his face. "That's humans for you. You never know where courage will appear." The battle raged for hours, each moment a test of ingenuity, will, and heart. The humans fought not just to win, but to protect, to survive, to ensure life persisted against overwhelming odds. And slowly, steadily, the tide began to shift. The Velari, though powerful, could not account for human unpredictability and empathy combined with strategy. Their strikes, precise yet cold, faltered against a force guided by intuition, imagination, and the indomitable will to protect life. When the dust finally settled, the valley was scarred but standing. Fires smoldered, equipment smoked, and humans tended to the wounded with care, exhaustion etched into every face. Ilara knelt beside a child, brushing soot from her hair. Mira approached, wiping sweat from her brow, and Joren stood surveying the valley with quiet pride. "They thought they could break us," Ilara said softly, "but we're still here. Not because we were stronger, but because we were human." Mira nodded. "Heart, courage, ingenuity. We have everything they can't measure." Joren looked to the horizon where the alien ships hovered, battered but not gone. "They'll come again, and again. But every time we'll grow stronger. Every time they'll learn that humans are not what they expect." Ilara's gaze lifted to the stars above. She felt the pulse of the valley beneath her feet, the rhythm of life that had survived countless trials. In that moment, she understood a profound truth. Humanity's strength was not just in survival, but in the courage to protect, the empathy to connect, and the will to persevere even in the face of unimaginable odds. The Velari had tested them, struck at their hearts, and sought to shatter their resolve. Yet humanity had endured not through raw power, but through a combination of courage, creativity, and compassion. The qualities no machine or algorithm could ever fully predict or defeat. Ilara exhaled, the weight of exhaustion mingling with pride. "They may be unstoppable," she whispered, "but so is the human spirit." And in the Valley of Lumen, scarred but alive, humanity had proven that no matter how powerful the enemy, heart and ingenuity could rewrite the rules of battle itself. The dawn of the seventh day broke over the Valley of Lumen, casting a pale silver light across a landscape still scarred from battle. Fires smoldered in hidden pockets and devices hummed quietly, patched and repaired by hands that refused to rest. But the humans were ready. This was no longer merely a defense, it was the moment to take control, to show the Velari what it truly meant to underestimate life itself. Ilara stood on the ridge, overlooking the valley with Mira at her side and Joren behind her. The three had become the living embodiment of human ingenuity, resilience, and courage. Every failure, every fear, every victory had led to this point. "They'll come for everything," Joren said quietly. "Not just the valley, but hope, survival. Us. They'll try to crush what we stand for." Ilara's eyes burned with determination. And we'll show them that hope is stronger than steel, survival stronger than calculation, and life stronger than any algorithm. Mira tapped the console, initiating the network's final configuration. This time, it was not just a web of illusions, it was a symphony of possibilities. A battlefield rewritten in real time, reacting to every Velari move with cunning beyond prediction. Human minds and machines fused, improvising faster than any logic could anticipate. Above, the Velari descended, their ships gleaming, calculating, radiating power meant to intimidate. Their commander's voice carried through the air in tones of alien precision, demanded surrender. Ilara's lips curved into a small, fierce smile. "Surrender is not a human word," she said softly. The battle erupted like a storm. The valley became a living, breathing entity, responding to human ingenuity. Illusions moved with lethal grace. Drones struck with unpredictable precision, and traps concealed within natural terrain bewildered the alien sensors. Every pulse, every decision, every act of courage became a tool in a vast tapestry of strategy. And then came the moment that would redefine the Velari's understanding of life itself. Ilara activated the final layer, a network of synchronized energy pulses designed to manipulate the invader's perception at a fundamental level. Suddenly, every calculation the Velari relied on collapsed. Illusions multiplied exponentially, reality itself bending under human design. Ships collided with projections of phantom terrain, algorithms crashed on patterns that were impossible, and the invaders' once perfect strategy became a chaotic dance they could not predict or control. In the heart of the valley, humans fought with tools, with courage, and with heart. Civilians guided each other through danger. Engineers improvised solutions in real time, and soldiers moved as extensions of the network, improvising, adapting, surviving. Every life mattered, and every act of ingenuity amplified the human advantage. Jiren shouted across the battlefield, his voice carrying fierce joy. "We're alive! And we're in control!" Mira's fingers flew over the console, tears streaking her face as she manipulated the illusions, energy flows, and real-world defenses in perfect harmony. "We're showing them what humans can do when we refuse to be predictable." Ilara, standing at the highest ridge, felt the pulse of the valley beneath her feet, the rhythm of life, courage, and hope flowing through every human around her. "We are more than technology," she whispered to the wind. "We are heart. We are imagination. We are life itself." The Velari commander's voice faltered, then grew frantic. Every projection, every strategy they deployed was turned against them, not with raw power, but with brilliance, adaptability, and the unpredictable will of humans united. By nightfall, the battlefield was silent. The Velari ships hovered, damaged, disoriented, and defeated, not because humans wielded superior weapons, but because they had harnessed something no machine could predict, the unyielding, creative, courageous spirit of humanity. The humans of Lumen stood amidst the smoke and ruins, exhausted but alive. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious, not as conquerors, but as a testament to what life could achieve when heart, ingenuity, and courage were united. Ilara gazed at the horizon where the Velari ships retreated, a small, resolute figure against the vast sky. "They called us primitive," she said softly, her voice carrying through the valley. "But we rewrote their battle plans. We proved that humans cannot be measured, predicted, or controlled." Joran stepped beside her, his face streaked with dirt and sweat, and placed a hand on her shoulder. "We didn't just survive," he said. "We reminded the universe that life, our life, is impossible to contain." Mira smiled, exhausted but triumphant. "And they'll remember that always. They'll remember the humans of Lumen." Ilara looked up at the stars glowing faintly above the valley. She felt the pulse of life, the rhythm of courage, the spark of imagination that had carried them through the storm. In that moment, she understood something profound. Humanity's power was not in its machines, its weapons, or its numbers, but in the heart that guided every choice, the creativity that defied expectation, and the will that refused to surrender. The Valley of Lumen was scarred but alive. Humanity had endured, had triumphed, had rewritten what it meant to be underestimated. And as the night embraced the valley, a quiet truth resonated across the stars. Primitive, they had said. But humans had proved that life itself was their most powerful weapon, and it could never be predicted, controlled, or defeated. And somewhere in the infinite darkness of the cosmos, the Velari would never forget the day they learned that humans were more than they could ever calculate.